With the effects of globalization and an increase in the demand for qualified professionals in the 21st century, teaching ESP has started to draw greater attention. Currently, learners need courses to cater for their specific needs to serve the demand of the society. As a result, ESP has started to attract growing attention from policymakers, course designers, teachers, and learners. According to Bastertman in 2017, despite the growing importance of the field of ESP, it remains an unexplored territory in teacher education. In this video, we will be discussing the ESP course design and related issues.
Good day, everyone. My name is Ivan Carl Giso,
And I am Juicy-sensei
and we are your reporters.
for today's topic.
Yes. Hi, Juicy. Good day. How are you?
Hi, Ivan. I'm doing good. What about you?
Well, I'm actually feeling great. Thank you so much for asking.
That's good
Well,
to know.
Juicy, for the past couple of weeks, we've actually talked about ESP, right? And the needs analysis. So, what have you learned so far?
Well, for the past few weeks, I've actually learned a lot, especially the difference between ESP and EGP. But as of now, what I really looked into is that what ESP really is. And I think ESP, or English
Mhm.
for specific purposes, refers to the teaching and learning of the language to a specific group of individuals that have a purpose. And these are specifically for adults. So, in general, this purpose is professional. That is, learners are taught a set of skills that they currently need in their professional career. What about you? What are your thoughts
That
about
is
it?
true. Yeah, that's true. Well, I actually agree with you. And I've also learned something about needs analysis. And I learned that needs analysis is very important, especially with planning and designing an ESP course. And with this idea in mind, today, Juicy, actually, we will discuss ESP course design and related issues. Now, you, of course, will focus on planning, conceptualizing, developing, and implementing ESP programs, while I, on the other hand, I will explain the relating needs analysis result to ESP course design. So let's begin.
Yes, now before we start, let us learn first the objectives of our lesson. So, for today, all of us are expected to discuss issues related to planning, conceptualizing, developing, implementing, and evaluating ESP programs.
That's right. And they will also learn to differentiate different approaches in ESP course design.
And the third would be identify the relationship of the result of needs analysis in designing an ESP course.
And lastly, you will learn to construct reflective essays based on the given guide questions. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome our first reporter for today, Jusime Ligat.
Let's talk about planning, conceptualizing, developing, and implementing ESP programs. Designing an ESP course is described by Dudley Evans and St. John as a set of phases. For the authors, the key stages in ESP are needs analysis, course and syllabus design, material selection and production, teaching and learning, and evaluation. These are not separate, linearly related activities. Rather, they represent phases which overlap and are interdependent. Let's go to the needs analysis. As you see, needs analysis is the most typical characteristic of ESP. It is generally regarded as criteria or a key feature of ESP, which is formally focused rather than exclusively on target or end of course requirement. And it is usually to take account of learners' initial needs, including learning needs. As criteria of ESP, needs analysis serves three main purposes. First, it provides a mean of obtaining wider input into the content, design, and implementation of a language program. Second, it can be used in developing goals, objectives, and contents. Third, it serves as a means of evaluating an existing program. The information of learner needs solicited falls naturally into two different categories. The first is essentially biographical data, while the second is more personal, relating to learners' preferences and perception of needs. Now, the technique for those in relation to collecting data and course planning can be ranged on a continuum from formal to informal. Formal techniques include standardized interviews and proficiency assessments, while informal techniques include such a thing as classroom observation or self rating scale that will be used by learners in evaluating the learning activities. So, for questionnaires and interview construction, Fitzgerald proposes a set of guidelines covering the following: background or the student's background. This includes the biographical information plus the level of education of the students and previous language learning experience and current proficiency in the target language. The second, we have language style, to which such questions be applied to investigate as whether the learners learn best through discussions, mastering things before doing new things exposure, reviewing grammar, and having sufficient comprehension on relevant vocabulary before reading a text. And the last one, or the third one, we have language needs. This refers to the reasons of learners to take a language course, including what language skills they prefer to master and what situation the language will be used by learners. The results of the needs analysis will aid the ESP instructor identify valuable information about the course. The teacher will know about their prospective professional needs, their needs in terms of language skills, and their deficiency in language skills. Therefore, needs analysis is basic to establish curriculum content, teaching materials, and methods that will motivate learners. Let's move on to course or syllabus design. Planning a course and designing the syllabus are processes that have different levels of preparation and development that are closely related to the aims and objectives established for the specific group of learners. Noonan, 1988, suggests ESP syllabus designers to equally focus on language functions, as well as on the subject matter through which the language is taught. Course design includes syllabus development, instructional methodology or approach, and assessment procedures. Decisions in connection with these segments of course design are made in response to the needs of learners' population. Even there are various types of syllabus known, each of which has four main components, and these are objectives, methods or methodology, materials, and evaluation. Beside the four components, a syllabus designer may include other relevant information such as course policy, weekly schedule, assignments, as well as course identity and course description. White classifies language syllabus types into three, which are content based, skills based, and method based syllabi. For most teachers, selection of teaching materials depends on their availability. When teachers start developing their ESP materials, they should follow the four basic precepts in ESP materials development. They are sustainability for the proficiency level, relevance to the learner's needs, creativity in tasks or activities, and discursive strategies. And the last one is simulation of the target speech acts. Some overarching characteristics of instructional materials are that they do not teach, but facilitate the learning process, present a clear and coherent unit structure, are in consonance with pedagogical approaches, and offer problem solving tasks as well as lay down models for language use. Material is considered a crucial component of any instructional program, particularly of ESP courses. Instructional material means all materials that are designed for use by learners and their teachers as a learning resource and help learners acquire facts, skills, or opinions, or develop cognitive processes. Instructional materials may be printed or non printed and may include textbooks, technology based materials, and other educational materials and tests. This could also be web based or electronic textbooks or ebooks. So, in selecting and developing materials for ESP teaching, two issues may need to concern, which are the language systems and language uses. Language system concern grammatical structure and core vocabulary and pattern of text organization, while language uses cover speech acts, genres, social interactions, and word use for discipline specific meaning. The fourth one in the key stages is the teaching and learning. Teachers must be equipped with the principles and approaches or methods in teaching, such as communicative language teaching, total physical response, cooperative language learning, and many more. Common instructional tasks in ESP course are roleplay, simulation, case study, project work, and oral presentation, by which the instruction effectively promotes communication and professional skill as well as language skills of students. The last one is evaluation. Course evaluation is important in ESP pedagogy because it gathers the evidence to understand the effectiveness of the course in terms of the skills enhancement of the learners. It is the last but not the least important stage for teachers because it helps to improve and promote the effectiveness of their course. As we can see, developing an ESP course is difficult, but a very important process. Therefore, before teaching a course, we need to formulate the goals and objectives of the course, conceptualize the content, select the teaching materials, and thoroughly plan the course and decide about the ways of evaluating it. We must keep in mind the purpose of an ESP course, which aims to fulfill the needs of the students. In this section, key issues in ESP curriculum design will be discussed. The first one we have abilities required for successful communication in occupational settings. Cummins, in 1979, theorized a dichotomy between basic interpersonal communication skills, or BICS, and cognitive academic language proficiency, or CALP. The former refers to the language skills used in the everyday informal language used with friends, family, and coworkers, while the latter refers to the proficiency or the language proficiency required to make sense of and to use academic language. The situation in which individuals use BICs are characterized by contexts that provide relatively easy access to meaning. However, CALP use occurs in contexts that offer fewer contextual clues. It is, in my opinion, that because ESP requires comprehensive needs analysis and because the learning centered curriculum is not static, it is impossible to expect that the developer be in a position to identify the perfect balance of the abilities noted above for any particular group of learners. In reality, a large part of this responsibility is that of the instructors. It is the instructors who are in the best position to identify the changing learner needs and who are in the best position to ensure that all students received a balanced diet of language. The second one, we have content language acquisition versus general language acquisition. As you see, the time devoted to developing general language and academic skills far outweighs the time devoted to the acquisition of content knowledge. The third one, we have heterogeneous learner group versus homogeneous learners group. There are a number of variables which characterize a heterogeneous learner group. I argue that variations in language level, prior education, and work experience can be accommodated only to a certain extent. Minimum entrance standards must be established in the areas of language level, motivation, and prior education and experience. Most importantly, these standards must be strictly enforced at the time of placement. We have the last one, which is the materials development. Do ESP textbook really exists? This is central question Jones addresses. One of the core dilemmas he presented is that ESP teachers find themselves in a situation where they are expected to produce a course that exactly matches the needs of a group of learners, but are expected to do so with no or very limited preparation time. In the real world, many ESL instructors or ESP developers are not provided with ample time for needs analysis, materials research, and materials development. There are many texts which claim to meet the needs of ESP courses, but Jones comments that no one or no ESP text can live up to its name. He suggests that the only real solution is that a resource bank of pooled materials can be made available to all ESP instructors. The only difference between this resource bank and the one that is available in every educational setting is that this one is to include cross index doable, workable content based resources. That's it. Now we're going to continue learning more about another topic which will be reported by Ivan Carl Gisok.
Good day once again. My name is Ivan Carl Gisot, and today I will be talking about relating needs analysis result to ESP course design. But before we dig deep into this topic, let's try to define first the two most important terms in this lesson, the needs analysis and course design. So, what is needs analysis? Well, MY et al. Define needs analysis as the activities that we do which helps us to collect information in which these information are basis in developing a curriculum for a specific group of students. Now, with the core information gathered through needs analysis, we can therefore say that this process is very important. And just like what Dudley Evan and St. John said, it is the cornerstone of ASP. So without needs analysis, planning and designing a course would be very difficult. Yeah, we already talked about needs analysis from the previous reporters though, but we haven't talked about course design yet. So let's define course design. What is course design in ASP? Well, course design refers to the planning and structuring of a course to achieve the needed goals. And according to Robinson, a course design is the outcome of a number of elements, such as the result of needs analysis, the course designer's approach to syllabus and methodology, and the existing materials. With this being said, we can say that a course design is actually a series process. It starts with needs analysis, then the interpretation of the data collected from the needs analysis. Next is the creation of the syllabus, which is followed by material writing. And then we have classroom teaching, and finally, the evaluation. So now, In a course design, there are certain approaches that we can use and follow. And for this lesson, we will discuss about three of them. Okay, so we will talk about the three different approaches in ESP course design. And let's begin with a language-centered course design. So what is this type of approach in language course designing, ESP course designing? Well, a language-centered course design approach is the simplest kind of course design process and one most familiar with English teachers. It has the aim to draw a direct connection between the analysis of the target situation and the content of the ESP course. Now, the previous reports regarding needs analysis informed us that the target situation analysis aims to identify the language needs of the students in relation to target work situation. Thus, in this type of approach, typical language routines of students' work context and linguistic forms that are used in their work are of focus um, in this approach. So as what you can see in this figure, this approach actually starts with identifying the learner's target situation and then the selection of theoretical language to identify the linguistic features that the learners need. So based on the identified data, syllabus is then created. The next step, of course, is designing the teaching and learning materials based on the syllabus. And finally, the last step is to conduct an evaluation to see how successful the course is. So that is the process of the language-centered approach in course designing. Now, let's proceed to the next approach. We have the skill-centered course design. So unlike the previous approach though, this one disagrees to the idea of specific registers of English as a basis for ASP. It has the aim, by the way, its aim is not to provide a specific corpus of English, specified corpus of linguistic knowledge, like specific vocabulary and grammar, but it actually aims to help learners become better processors of information. So this type of course design follows two basic principles. We have theoretical and pragmatic. So what are these two principles? Well, let's start with theoretical principle. So theoretical principle actually aims to get away from the surface performance data and look at the competence that underlies in the performance. On the other hand, the pragmatic principle specifies that an ESP course is not about achieving a particular set of goals, but enabling the learners to achieve what they can within the given constraints. So let's look at the figure. Okay, so by looking at this figure, we can say that skill-centered approach starts with identifying the target situation. And based on the target situation analysis, the skills or strategies needed to cope with the target situation are analyzed and determined in relation, of course, to the theories of language and learning. Then the syllabus is created. And of course, based on the syllabus, materials will be developed. And the last part, just like the previous one, is evaluation. So that's the second approach in in ESP course designing. Now we're down to our last approach. The last approach in ESP course design is learning-centered approach. So this approach is based on the principle that learning is totally determined by the learners alone, even though teachers can sometimes influence what is taught. So in this approach, learning is seen as a process in which the learners identify what language skills they have in order to make sense of the flow of the new information. So learning in this sense is an internal process, which is crucially dependent upon the knowledge the learners already have and their ability and motivation to use what they have learned. So this is the process in learner-centered model. Okay, unlike the previous approach, this model involves two different analyses. and both starts by identifying the learners. Then the learning and target situation of these learners are analyzed with the implications on the theories of language and learning. In the analysis of the learning situation, one must identify, as what you can see here, the attitudes, wants, potentials of the learners, as well as their needs and constraints of teaching and learning situation. On the other hand, the analysis of target situation focuses on the identification of the skills, knowledge that are needed to function in the target situation. So once the results of these two analyses are determined, of course, we will proceed with the writing of the syllabus and the creation of materials. And then, of course, evaluations will be conducted to assess the learners and to determine whether the implementation of the course is a success or not. Okay, so those are the three different approaches in ASP course designing. And to summarize the main points of the three, we can say that first, a language-centered approach entails the nature rather of the target iteration and performance determine an ASP course. On the other hand, skills-centered approach here indicates that we must look behind the target performance data to discover what processes enable someone to perform. So those processes will of course determine the content of the ESP course. And the last one is the learning-centered approach. Learning-centered approach looks beyond the competence, since the aim is of course not to discover the competence itself, but how someone acquires that competence. Okay, so now that we're down to our last topics, let's talk about the last one. So it's about the factors that affect ESP course design. So as what you can see in the illustration here, it's actually from Hudson and Water in 1987. We can see that there are three main elements or factors that affect course design. And these are the language description, theories of language, and need analysis. The language description identifies the content of the syllabus. It's like the what of teaching. The learning theories affects the methodologies of teaching, how the course is taught, and the needs analysis, of course, determines the nature of the learners, the target, and the learning situation. So these are the three factors that affect course designing based on Hutchins and Water. Now, I've also looked into another study. It's from Phillips, and he also considers other factors contributing to the success and failure of the ESP course. And these are, okay, first we have the subject content that embodied in the learner's purposes, the duration of the ESP course, the weekly intensity of the course, the staff students ratio, and the staff's teaching load. We also have here the composition of the students group according to their mother tongues, the age, academic background, degree of competence in second language, if there's any, and the organizational structure of the educational institution, the budgetary provision for the course, and of course, the availability of the technology. So those are the factors according to Phillips that affects the ESP course design. So my topic is actually talks about relating the results of needs analysis in ESP course designing. So you might be wondering, why is there a need for us to relate the results of our needs analysis to our course designs? Well, I will present to you this study conducted by Barcany 2017 or Barcane, in which he investigated the role of needs analysis in the design of effective ESP course, taking the case of Master 1 students of Finance and International Trade at Muhammad Qadir University of Biskra. So the obtained results of the study revealed that students' low proficiency level in ESP classes is due to the inappropriate ESP courses that are not determined by their needs. So based on the study, of course, indeed, the appropriate identification of learners' needs helps us teachers ESP teachers, designers of the course to determine and refine the content of the ESP course. It also helps us to see to what extent the course design meets the learner's real language needs. Therefore, the role of needs analysis in ESP curriculum design is indisputable. It exactly contains those tools and methodologies that help us to gather information from the learners, teachers, and language courses with the purpose to, of course, identify what language skills the learners need to develop and how they can develop these skills in the best and most effective ways. Okay, so I believe those are the things that I need to talk about in this topic. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll have a fantastic day. Hi again, Juicy.
Hi, Ivan.
Hi. So now that we have discussed them our topics for today, what shall we do next?
Well, of course, let's test what they have learned in today's topic by doing an assessment.
That is right. And for our evaluation, you guys need to write a short reflective essay based on the guide questions.
And you are expected to create a maximum of 100 words essay.
That is right. And your essays will be rated based on a specific rubric.
So, what you need to do is you have to visit our class Google Drive and see the written report for the guidelines and rubrics.
That is right. And I think that's it. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for listening. I hope that you learned something from our report for today.
And once again, this is Juicy May Liget.
And this is Ivan Carl Gisok saying,
Let's change the world.
one student at a time.
Goodbye,
Thank you so
everyone.
much. Goodbye.